Coaches, it's nearly Christmas. This is episode 28 of the Don't Tell Me, Show Me podcast. This is the end of season one for us. I can't believe we've actually managed to do 28. Thanks to Mark and his great accountability coaching. We've published every single Thursday at the exact same time, which in itself is a minor miracle. And so what we've done is we've chosen our highlights from the whole series. We're going to rattle through as many as we can and bring you like the golden nuggets, like what are the key takeaways from series one of our podcast. We've had loads of comments. We've had loads of DMs from coaches wanting to highlight specific areas. And so this is a chance for us to really just focus on those key points. If you're a new listener, then this is going to give you a whistle-stop tour of some of our content, some of the key concepts that we introduce coaches to. If you're a long-time listener and you've been rattling through all of them, then thanks very much for staying with us. This is going to help you to solidify your learning. So I'm going to try my best to, it's going to be like herding cats with these two guys, trying to get them to focus on some.
You're going to commit, Simon. You're not going to try. You're going to commit.
I'm going to commit to herding cats and keep these guys under wraps for the podcast. We're going to rattle through things as quickly as we can. Mark, kick us off. What's your first highlight?
Episode one. It was interesting because mine have almost been a sandwich of the episodes, and there was no reason to pick one apart from the content. The element that struck me with one is the fact that the conversation was really meaty regarding the reality of when teams come together, with the coaches' expectations, the staff expectations, the individual athlete expectations, and how often invisible they are, and how without solidifying some clarity of purpose and drive where everyone's synced, can really cause problems for the rest of that time that team is together. So whether it was we talked about Alan's example with an international team coming together, but even a league team, I think it can apply to every level. But what I really liked about it is we discussed elements that I've never heard on a podcast, but the real reality of the struggles some coaches have, but maybe they don't realize there's a way to reduce that at the beginning.
Yeah, that concept of alignment from the beginning can solve so many future problems. And Alan, you and I sometimes joke about like, this is coaching, like the bits that you don't like doing, that's actually coaching. It's not just on the field or the pitch. It's so wide, and creating that alignment at the beginning and going through potentially some difficult storming type of conversations, that's actually coaching.
And also the perception is important. They can be perceived as difficult. Difficult is no longer difficult when you're in the midst of it, because you're in it, you're on the do cycle, as we say. And sometimes like you don't feel, you just get on with stuff because you got to find your way out. If you stay in the middle of that storm, it's game over. So it's actually not difficult when you're in the middle of it. Getting into it, I think, is the difficult part. Taking that first step is the difficult part. That sounds a bit contradicting. But if you think about it as a concept, when you're in the middle of a storm, you don't stand still. You go through the second part of it. So it's not as, the perception I think is important there, Simon, around team dynamics. When you're bringing people together for the first time, especially if you're a head coach and they're new assistants, new staff, or you're working for a new organization. And Mark's very, very good at this, like, just eliminating the gray area and being very transparent around what's the purpose, how can we form alignment with the purpose in hand. And everyone's clear on each other's roles, not just me being clear on my role, not good enough. Being clear on everybody else's roles, because now you're talking about enhancing a support system with that team dynamic. But yeah, I think the perception is interesting.
I think the point that's really important that you're making there as well, that you haven't been explicit with, but it connects to what you said, Alan, is I find a lot of my clients over the decades is they don't make time for it. They don't schedule it in because they want to get on the court or on the pitch or on the golf course, or, with the corporate people, it's exactly the same. Well, we need to get on with the work. And you say, no. In order to move forward, we need to stop. We need to stop and breathe. We need to set alignment. It's the same as if you're in the mountains. You don't keep walking. You stop. You navigate. Where's the direction? Where's the best route? You reference yourself. Then you move forward. But everyone needs to know where they're going. We don't do that well enough because we don't think, right, how important is this? And it was interesting. One of my international clients building for the next Olympics, we had a Zoom yesterday, and one of the takeaways from one of the podcasts that most are now listening to was, I asked the question is, can we afford not to? And out of the 90-minute Zoom, it was the one element where the head coach went, whoa, we can't afford not to. You're absolutely right. And that has stuck with him working through. And already they put interventions in yesterday. So that, I think, making time and not trying to squeeze it in is the critical element. And then, as you say, Alan, once you're into it, as long as you agree what success is at the beginning, use some of the tools that we've shared on other podcasts, that episode 1 will be gold dust for many coaches to listen back to.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a pie chart that has 3 sections, and it's about our focus or our goals as a team. One section is winning, another section is development, and a third section is participation or retention. And if I got each one of the players on my team to draw that pie chart for our team, I think there'd be quite a few differences. Like, I have quite a wide range of people in my team. So I've got some older players who are pretty competitive, and they know every team in the league that they want to win. I've got some players in their kind of early 20s who are progressing in their careers and their studies. They like playing basketball, but and they like the competitive nature, but they're really there for the connection, the participation, the enjoyment of it. And then I've got really young players, like 16-year-olds, who are there to get better. They're there for development. And I'm just wondering, I should have done that exercise at the beginning of the season, had them all draw a pie chart and then compare notes, because the challenges I've had this season can all relate back to different perceptions of how you would draw that pie chart.
I think the biggest obstacle that often comes our way is we've allowed people to have isolated interpretations of actually what the purpose is, what the experience is, what the motivation is for each other. Like, we make judgments on each other, not really knowing how the other person feels. We create narratives, and we live in those spaces that are narratives, and very often they're not positive. Their narratives are, well, he thinks this, she thinks that, player to coach, coach to player, coach to coach, coach to owner, owner to coach. Like, we just create false narratives that have us acting and behaving a certain way, that if everybody knew what everybody thought, we had some superpower, and we knew what everyone else was thinking. I wonder how much different we'd behave and act, and how much more cohesive we would be. The reality is we'd be a lot more cohesive. Not that we're setting up an agreement, we're just an agreeing culture. We agree with whatever. It's not about that. That's not my point. My point is honesty, transparency, with a clear lighthouse, to use Mark's language and concepts, and everybody understanding that the lighthouse is over there. I don't like it because I have to swim a little bit further than you, but that's fine because that's your role on the team. You're actually standing almost near the lighthouse. So yeah, because I have a different role in this team, and it's acceptance of each other's roles. I think that's where you really get a strong team dynamic. And I've been lucky, but I've experienced that in teams. And I've also been very lucky that I can compare it to teams I've been in where that hasn't been alive and well, and it's been very disconnected. And it's lovely to be able to compare and contrast, because it's strengthened me as a coach as well to know what I need to be doing when I'm in a decision-making seat and a position of power, such as a head coach.
Alan, you jumped onto a really important observation that I've been lucky enough with so many teams I've worked with over the decades is when you've been in teams that have had the right behaviors, the right culture, you can see what's possible. And it's not about capability of play. It's about the human beings committing to what they can do as a collective and hold each other accountable and celebrating. The challenge I have it many times, I still have it now, is I go into another organization and what they're doing they think is world class. An athlete might be going, yeah, this is great. And you're looking at them thinking, you are nowhere near. The line between what you think is world class or what you think is perfectly acceptable for your role within that lighthouse of where you want to get to the reality is hugely wide. So sometimes one of my challenges is coming in as an outsider that support is getting them aware that there is a difference, but making judgment of how much to expose them to early on, because it may just totally alienate you if you shared raw truth about where you think you are and where you are. So part of this setting up is, where's the first step of change? Where's the first awareness of we could do better, but what would that look like? And it's what it would look like and sound like all the way back to, I think we mentioned on other podcasts, is the simple thing about a warm-up. Once you've slightly warmed up, you're into it, and someone says sprint past the line, it's actually sprinting past the line every time. It's not decelerating before the line. That's an attitudinal choice thing. But that echoes through everything you do, because you're making a choice to shortcut the line. And it's these little things that when you know what you're looking for, you see so many and you think, we're taking a shortcut there, we're taking a shortcut there. Well, that's an attitudinal element that will have an impact here. So that sometimes can be the tricky part. When you've seen how great humans can be, is when you see them way off, but they think it's great, is how can you make the shift? And that takes weeks and months, but you can start. I think episode 1 is a great way to listen to understand how can I start that.
Great. Right. The buzzer's gone off. We're moving on to number 2. Alan, what's your first highlight?
First highlight is very close to home for me. It's where I shared, having come back from a European Championship this past summer, how I facilitate. It's episode 9, by the way, and I think the title was "Permission to Challenge Me." And effectively, what that means is very closely related to what we've just been talking about. I worked with a staff. We worked cohesively. We co-collaborated in setting up how we're going to work effectively together. Because I'm one person, and in a team of 24 people, 32 initially in a squad, broken down into 24, finally broken down into 19, not including the performance director and the governing body. So the team that's in the hotel, on the bus, 19 people. I can't ensure 19 people are on it and micromanage them, because it just won't work. We won't achieve any potential, anywhere near potential. We won't even scratch the surface. We'll just break down, all of us. So it was about, how do I set up a safe space where they feel confident to challenge me when they feel it's necessary. And challenging me, basically having an understanding what my role is, and if I'm offline in that role, or if I'm not fulfilling my potential with my role, or I'm not doing my role to my agreed capability, that they'll challenge me on that. Or if we decide to do something and go, well, actually, I feel safe enough in this environment, and it is expected of me, to different temperature, it's expected of me to challenge somebody if they're not doing what we agreed they would do. It's expected. Not that we've given them permission, not that they feel safe to challenge. They're expected. It would be unacceptable for them to not challenge me, or a player to challenge another player. So it all sounds great, doesn't it? It sounds like, yeah, wave a magic wand, you're off and running. Why isn't every team doing that? Because it's hard and it takes time. And you know what? I can't say how long it takes, because every person, every group is different, and there is no linear process to this. There's a clarity on how to do it, yes, but then there's a patience with it being as good as you want it to be, but you will recognize progress along the way. And it's what comes with this reality, Simon, Mark, as you guys both know, is there is very difficult conversations to be had, because you're talking about acceptance of roles. And also, I'll just say this real quick, Mark, before you jump in, and then I'll pause because I need a breath. But you can see I'm quite passionate about this area. I must sit in this space a lot, in fact. But as the head coach, I had to be very mindful of myself. Like, what shadow do I cast in this relationship that this group of people I work with, and being very self-aware of how I'm coming across to others, because that can be a real debilitator early on, regardless of intention. Go ahead, Mark.
I was going to share that I've got in my mems area a clip of you showing world class in influencing that, in the fact of how you can seek opportunities, and this is what great coaches do. Once that agreement's been made of expectations, and we can say permission early on and go, one of the things I do, by the way, diversifying slightly, but back to the point I see you doing so well, is often players will nod, but they won't want to do it in the moment. So one little tool I use is I get all the players to stand together, and I get each player to say to the other players, particularly the people around them in position, I'm giving you permission. I want you to. I need you to challenge me in these things. I'm telling you now, I want you to do it. And that opens a door for those players to go, okay, I'm hearing it directly from you, then I will go for it. So these are little tools that can sometimes unlock that. Not sure about now, because you're saying it now, but when you're in that mood, when you're fired up, You take nothing from me, and you've snapped at me before when I've attempted to challenge you in those moments. So that's one element. And on the video, I think I've got in the members area, you were influencing that rule of two element within that on the court. So someone was calling someone from, you had an injured player that you gave them a role to what are you seeing? You're asking, what are you seeing? They were recognizing there was a player on the court saying the right thing. You were going, okay, we'll make sure they connect. The player was connecting to the other player, but at that time you were noticing the other player was not following that acceptance, acknowledge, and action. So you shouted, he's right, listen to him, he's right. So you're supporting the player, but you weren't stepping in. And then that player started to make the change. So that's a great example of you looking for opportunities, and without stopping play, you're supporting the people that have had the courage to share. But you're making sure the person at the other end is actually listening and acting on it. Do you remember that?
I'm smiling because I remember it well, and it was actually 2018. So that's scary to think it was, what was that, 6 years ago almost. It's wild. But yeah, that is one way to ensure that you're following through. Like, you don't have to stop, and everything doesn't have to be a big discussion. It can be a micro challenge and walk away. You know, we talk about micro coaching and micro praise, like praise, prompt, leave, say something positive, prompt them to do something else and walk away. You can do the same with this. It could be micro moments of a challenge. And actually, I think frequent micro moments are actually more beneficial than actually, let's sit down and have a big talk about this after the practice. And, you know, everyone's exhausted by the end of that conversation. Just those micro, but again, you have to be scanning for this stuff. You have to be aware of what you're looking for. And what does it actually, like, do you know beforehand? Well, two things. Do you know what to be looking for? So have you teed that up in your own head? Have you had that discussion with your staff and with the players included? And secondly, be mindful of your own state when you do have these micro moments, because you don't want it to be emotional led, which, you know, you've got to be it's taking a breath can be very helpful. So if you're going to do a micro challenge, I would encourage coaches, take a big deep breath first, and then do it and then walk away. Just make sure your state is positive. Two other ways I can share how you can tee this up. One, announce to the staff the first day you meet them, and ensure that all players know eventually that I'm a head coach, that you as the head coach, you become assistant coaches in you become the assistant coach in certain contexts. So when they the labeled assistant coach is leading that segment of the practice session, me as the head coach, I'm no longer a head coach. I'm a support coach in that position. And if I don't demonstrate that, then it doesn't matter what I say. I've just erased every conversation we've had about giving you permission to challenge me, and us being a cohesive team that will back and support and challenge each other when it's necessary, after we understand and accept each other's roles. So I act like an assistant coach. Simon, you've been in some of the national team practices I've had, and if you came in for that 20-minute slot, you would think I was the assistant. You know, a head coach, when the physio gets off the bus, go grab the physio table, like get off the bus first, sit near the front, grab the physio table, grab the ball bag, carry the water, go out and fill the water before the practice. Let people see you doing that. Now you're living it, and make it a habit. It's not an Instagram picture like the England rugby team did years ago when they said sweep the sheds, and they posted pictures of them cleaning up the change room. Defeats the purpose. Do it authentically, because I'm demonstrating and living what we agreed, that I would be an assistant in your roles. The other way to do it is when we're having discussions or reviews about performance, practice performance, a review of a game, as the head coach, go last, speak last. Embrace everybody else's voice, thoughts, opinions, ideas first. Ask loads of questions. Don't go first, and be mindful of your source of power. At the end of the day, everyone sees you as the head coach. They know that you have the power to push a certain button at any moment that could impact others' contributions, be it minutes, be it their voice, be it their input. So go last would be my advice on that, and embrace each other's voices first.
I'd say that the last point on that, Alan, I think there's two lines within that last point you've made there. Is one line is letting people know, qualify and quantify if you have an opinion, because that's what I need to better understand you. So if someone's sharing something, be that inquisitive person back, says, can you give me an example? What do you mean by that, and qualify? Not just take it as I think that's what you mean, which I've seen trip up so many times from head coaches or other players listening to players. And the other element, obviously, if we've pre-agreed you can do this, then that can be really direct, because all you're doing is I'm honouring what we agreed. So it's kind of those two angles, is I'm giving you permission to share a thought and don't second guess what I want to hear, which that's an element we want the athletes to do as well. But if we say, if you qualify it or quantify it, whichever word you use that they understand, then one, that's getting you thinking before you share, so it's giving you more confidence. But secondly, then you can seek to understand in a far more rich manner, which is giving you a bit of space to absorb what's coming to allow you to respond.
Brilliant book, a tip for all the listeners. Simon Sinek, Leaders Eat Last. So look that up. I actually took that somewhat too literally, and in my workshops that I deliver in my day job, when it's lunchtime, I go to the back of the back of the line, and I eat last, which is perhaps a little too literal in my interpretation. But the concept is really, really interesting, because it just stuck with me. Like, leaders eat last. Okay, my turn. Episode 18: Needs versus Wants. I want you guys to comment on the difference between needs and wants from a coaching point of view. So I'm a coach working with athletes. I've got this one, I'm thinking about a specific athlete. How do I behave towards this person? Do I give them what they want? Do I give them what they need? How do I identify what they need? What if my perception of what they need to develop as a person and a player is different to their perception? So unpack this for me, and Alan, this is ringing bells for me around care and coaching, and some of the principles there, that to care for people is, when you're coaching them, is not to give them what they want, it's to support them to get what they need.
So yeah, you're talking about the concept of motivational displacement, to use the caring coaching terminology, and that effectively means that the work you're doing with the team you're coaching, your purpose is to serve their needs and motivations over your own motivations and needs. So you might need to not have lengthy conversations with players, but they need it. So can you overcome your need versus their needs? I can give a lived experience with that example alone. 3 years ago, we had an import player play for us at the club, and on Mondays we would do individual workouts, and I knew his workout would take 3 hours, but everybody else's workout took 45 minutes. Because after that workout, he needed a one-to-one conversation to discuss many different things, and so sometimes it would take 45 minutes, other times it could take double that. So I had to plan for that, and that was a stretch at times because other things to do in the day. But if I was true to what I was there for, which was to serve his needs and motivations, then I had to follow through with that. Now, there was an allowance given. Obviously, it wasn't as strict as every single Monday. I think the other thing, Simon, just to respond to your question, is there a shared understanding of the purpose? It's a lot easier to get players. So if you think the player needs this, but they're not accepting of that, then you go back to the bigger picture. And again, I say the lighthouse, has that been set up at the start? So what's the purpose of this team? What's the ambition of this team? And what's the actions that are required to achieve what the ambition of this group is? So again, for me, in those moments when players are pushing back on what you think they need, I always go back to I never force it upon them. I go back to the conversation. Just remind me what you said you wanted to achieve here. And if what you wanted to achieve requires X, Y, and Z, then we either have to change what you want or you have to commit to X, Y, and Z, because you can't have both. So it's helping them to understand that the sacrifices they have to make if they want to achieve what they said they want to achieve. Otherwise, we change that. I sound very much like Mark here. You would imagine I've been mentored by Mark for a number of years, and you would think that he's put a GoPro camera on my chest from time to time and done a hot and cold review with me for 10 years the way I'm talking. Never happened, of course.
I cannot deny or confirm these suggestions.
These allegations.
They're if we look at simplicity, if someone hasn't heard that episode and really hasn't, this is the first one you've listened to, which if you have, you've got some rich episodes to listen back to. The difference of need and want, in essence, within coaching and performance is your want might be your need. Well, that's a big bonus, but the need trumps the want. So what we're saying there is a lot of people have a personal preference. They like doing certain things. But there may be something you need to do that is trumping that in this moment. But you avoid that because you may not like it. You may not be as good at it. It just may be something you just find boring. It may not even excite you in the same way. So this is going back to Alan's point, is when there's that disagreement with coach to coach, coach to athlete, athlete to coach, athlete to athlete, makes no differences. We've got to make sure we spend a bit of time at the beginning initially. Episode 1's a great listen. There we go, connected back to that one. But also then we've established and we have clear agreement on baseline. So we mentioned in another episode about what baseline is. Baseline is just testing reality. So obviously you want to do that with a team. We discussed on an episode about, saying I'm going to finish 6th or 7th in a league, and you're going, well, until we do the first match, we don't really know how we're performing under real stress conditions. But for an athlete, if they go, no, I don't need to do that, I'm great at that. I just, this, and you're thinking, I'm seeing something totally different. There's many ways to do that performance profiling where we get them to go, okay, so what's a 10 or a 20? And let's set what that looks like. We're not doing about world number 1 unless you're world number 10 or whatever it may be, but something you go, this is where we need to get to based on a lighthouse. This is a positional play or whatever you're doing. This would what a 10 would look like if we're doing a 10 score. You can do any number score. So where would you see yourself now against that once we know what that looks like with the critical list of elements that you've decided or they've decided altogether of what they are? Now, what you might get is someone saying, oh, I'm a 9. If you're using a 10 score, and you're thinking you're a 3. Well, if you don't do something about that, you're just going to have arguments and conflict all the way through the season. So this is where we can start using data, and good coaches collate data. That could be as much as you've spotted that in the last 3 months, this athlete has turned up late 15 times. They can't remember it. But if they go, no, I'm fine, I'm always in time, I'm always ready, then you go, well, do you know in the last 3 months how many times you haven't, because you've given yourself an 8 there? 15 times on these. If you feel you need to, because that's an important element, they go 15. It says, yeah. So is that an 8 or a 9? Track it. It may be on a competency of a defense. If it's an element, Alan might be able, you two could put some texture on that in basketball, but they're going, yeah, I'm fantastic on this. And it may be you're seeing, no. I can see your hips are getting turned onto the outside. I'm making this up. Tell me if I'm wrong or right, or laugh at me. My hips are going out, and people are now pulling around the center. And this athlete thinks, no, I'm defending really well. But you're seeing, no, you're getting turned, which means that's what they're going around the inside of you. And if they can't recognize that, it might be some video footage where you're saying, right, let's have a look at these in the matches. So then video footage is where they go, oh, wow. Okay, so now based on that, where do we think we are on this? So just using any parameters you feel are fit for purpose to align how you're seeing it and how they're seeing it. Now, it may be, and I've seen it in the past, where a coach has thought bad of somebody a lower score than reality. They've been unfair because they've had some biases. But if the coach then starts looking at it and go, actually, yeah, I haven't really looked at that. I haven't really looked because you haven't been the first choice. I've got a lot of data on this player, hardly any with you. So this isn't I'm right as a coach. This is what's the data telling us. Let's look, let's explore. And it may be we haven't got data to go, well, let's use these next couple of weeks and let's see. Let's agree what that looks like. So once you have that parameter of agreement, it's far easier then to go, okay, so what is the need? So we've got 10 things now. In these situations, what would we say number 1 was? Number 2, number 3. Okay, what do they look like? How can we support each other and how the other players can support each other? And then we can do what Alan spoke about on the previous episode, is that, so what permission are we going to give me if you revert back and you can't self-manage? What do you want the other players or me to say to you to help you get back to this need in those moments when you don't feel like it? Say this to me, coach. Okay, I'll honor that for you. So we're setting up the parameters. But if there's a real mix of what an athlete is thinking and what a coach is thinking, and you don't spend time of getting some balance and agreement there, you're always going to struggle with them focused on what's needed and you thinking you're making the wrong choices now, or you're not committing to the very things you need to commit to.
Right. Thanks for that, guys. Let's keep moving. Mark, what's your next episode?
Mine was Mike Ford, episode 19. Mike Ford was a guest.
Yeah.
You don't follow rugby or the internationals, so Mike Ford for decades has been coaching at the highest level, domestically Premiership Rugby and Rugby Union, England Rugby, British Lions tour. He came from rugby league as a player for Wigan. I met him in '99 when he was a player coach for Oldham Rugby League, and then we kept in contact. Then I started to mentor and support him for over the years. So what I loved about that episode was a coach that even at the point when he was coaching at the highest level, his major light bulb moments of him recognizing, I'm not coaching well here. I'm telling, I'm showing, I'm reminding, but it's coming from me. And even at England, when one of his light bulb coaches, as an England coach, after coaching at the highest level, recognizing actually what I'm doing is not as effective as it needs to be. What I need to do is find a way to coach that is actually getting athletes to show him, to show themselves, to reflect on themselves, situational checking for understanding application, not just in words. So from somebody that could be really open as an episode of someone that coached at the highest level, but still saying, look, I got it wrong. This is how I recognize how I needed to change, and then commit to the change. Once he's found what he needed to change and a solution, really committing to that at the very highest level, I thought was a great episode for people to listen to. Because obviously, often when we listen into those top coaches, they'll rarely say, I got that wrong and I need to change when they reach the highest level. Normally people are sharing great golden nuggets, what could you give us, etc. And sometimes we expect a lot of the change in coaching is early on in your career, and then you find a way and then you stick to it and cultivate it. So I thought that was a great episode. It was a shame Alan wasn't available for that, because I think Alan would have thrown some fantastic questions at Mike. But you listened back to it, didn't you, Alan? Did you?
Yeah, no, that one I was available. It was another guest I wasn't available.
Oh, it was for. Rob, wasn't it? Yes,
it was Rob.
Yes, that's it. Yes. What did you take from that, Alan?
Well, I think it was just really everything you said. Plus, he was very, very good at demonstrating that it was something he couldn't do alone. And I think as a coach, we often carry a certain level of ego. And that ego is important, by the way. It'll help us survive difficult moments, help us get through until we can, gather some support around us or whatever. So the ego is strong, important. Strong ego is important. I'm very clear on that. So I'm not poo-pooing coaches having egos. But he was very good at demonstrating that he couldn't do that alone. He needed support, and I think that's what you gave. I know that's what you gave him, Mark. I remember being early on in your journey, our relationship, asking you loads of questions about your work with Mike Ford, because I was incredibly intrigued by somebody on that level, allowing effectively a stranger to begin with into the camp, see what goes on behind the curtains, set up agreements with you, and then be open to be challenged on those agreements. I thought that was a wonderful story. And this was going back 15 years when you were telling me about Mike Ford, and I just couldn't get enough information out of you. Even though you didn't give me loads, you had to respect that working relationship. But his commitment to change, I think the first part is the level of self-awareness he demonstrated, that he needed to change in order to advance and grow and prosper and develop. And listening to him on this podcast, at this stage of his career, he's still open to change. He still has a strong desire to be a continuous learner. And I think that's, if that's all you get from that podcast, that's going to motivate any coach to go, geez, if he's still open to change, I need to widen my lens. And I think it can enhance the motivation. If you go back and just listen to the way he talks, it would have me in my younger year going, oh, geez, I need to really widen my lens here, because this guy's years ahead of me with his experience.
And important point you make there, Alan. He's not what I call a flip-flop coach. Have you heard of that before? Great. I mentioned the time pirate the other episode. I just want to make sure. So for people that haven't, it's just.
So are the pirates wearing flip-flops? Is this the Is this what I'm supposed to be getting from that, Mark?
Only the really poor ones.
Okay.
And they don't last long. They normally walk the plank and they end up in the sea. So
this is taking a dive. Go on, keep going.
taking a dive, yes. So the flip-flop coach in this, Mike is not, is somebody, there's a new idea comes out, they've heard something and they just go, I'll do that now. I'll drop this and I'll do that. And we see too much of that going on. Where Mike, and I think you were good as well, I think Mike was really direct at me, was if I'm sharing something that may be different to what I was doing, he was really hard and clear on the challenge. He didn't accept it. He was open to understanding it, but he was very intense in wanting to understand the why, or what's it going to give me, what's different. But you could see when he was asking the questions, he wasn't asking the question to find fault. He was asking the questions to help him understand. Then when he got to the point, he goes, that now makes total sense. I'm going to commit to it and give it the time it needs, and then I'm going to review it. That as a framework to change is when we see progress. What is no good is you hearing something on a podcast or, on TV, or another coach will be on a coach course and you go, I'll just do that now because that's what the best that's won the championship does. And never sticking to anything, never really question it first, never connecting, well, where does that sit within my organization, within my coach, and within my team? And do I really understand it? Do I understand who I need to share it with before I commit to this change, and how long do I need to give it? That is a framework, and I think Mike did that very well, and I think you do that very well as well, Alan.
I think there's an aspect, thank you, Mark, I appreciate that. I think there's an aspect of struggle inside there. If you are going to take something on, you have to be willing to go through a phase of struggle. I think struggle is the requirement you need. It's the ingredient you need to actually be able to do it well, because nothing in coaching is easy. We're working with people who are very diverse in nature, have different needs, motivations, even though they're on the one team at the same level, and have different things going on in their life that impacts their behavior. So it doesn't, you can flip-flop all you want. If that's what you do, you're probably not going to become good at anything, because to become good at anything, you have to go through a struggle. And I thought Mike demonstrated that also. Like that, it wasn't easy for him. Mark, he said it wasn't easy to have you around him. And you weren't. I didn't find it easy to have you around me either, but I knew what my need was, and that's what made it easy, if I could say that. So yeah, it was great to hear him say he struggled, and it wasn't easy for him to actually make a shift and a change in his coaching, his way of coaching.
What did you take from it, Simon?
Well, our podcast is called Don't Tell Me, Show Me, and Mike unknowingly told a great story where he shifted his coaching from a definition of good coaching being, I've told you what to do, I've given you the information, I've told you what to do in this situation, through to you show me what to do in this situation, because that's the measure of me as a coach. You, the athlete, your ability to show me an execution of the concepts we've been coaching, that's how I know how good I am. My definition of success is how good are my athletes at implementing the concepts that I've introduced, not did I tell them and did they listen. So he really encapsulated our whole podcast really with that brilliant story of how he made a shift from being a telling coach to being a, well, you show me coach.
And importantly, the show me was not in a drill. The show me was not in short-term recall. The show me was in real match type situations that wasn't a discussion from 30 seconds ago. Could be the next day, the next week. I'm now scanning for that element that we're working on. Can you identify it, choose it, execute it amongst opposition? That is the show me bit that I think Mike and anyone that really gets it connects with. It's not, let's do this drill. Okay, now show me. And the parameters are so controlled, they're pretty much just playing by numbers. They're not really making decisions. And it's in short-term recall, so they can remember it anyway. So it might look great, but within a week or 2 days, they're going to forget. So it's not real. So that show me has to be contextual.
Yeah. All right, let's keep moving. Whose turn is it? Alan. I think it's
Alan.
your turn. Go for it.
Yeah, there were so many to choose from, but this one I liked a lot because I feel all coaches go through it, and it's episode 24, Overcoming Disconnect. I mentor and support a lot of coaches, as you both know, quite a lot throughout each season, from a variety of levels. One in particular who's probably one top 5 leagues in the world, top 3 leagues in the world, and he experiences it all the way down to high school coaches in the States and club coaches in our own club here in Edinburgh, and they've all experienced so, and players disconnecting from each other. And on the podcast, what I enjoyed about it is we actually talked about something that's not often talked about, but it happens in every season as well. Coaches disconnecting from certain players, players disconnecting from the coach. Again, go back to the source of power and reasons as to why. And obviously the big one is players disconnecting from each other. And you know, we shared on that. We discussed where does it emerge from? What's the source of that? Because the issue is not the issue that's happening in front of you. That's backed up by something that either hasn't been done well or that you've left them off the hook with for too long. So if we just identify what those things are real quick, if you didn't set the team up or baseline what the reality is of who we are and what we have, and then work towards the outcomes that are achievable, and everyone has a shared understanding of what those outcomes we're working towards are, and then have checkpoints along the way. And I won't get into the details that we got into around how'd you do that in a practice session, how'd you do that over the course of the first quarter of the year, how'd you do it over the course of a season. Go listen to the podcast if you want those details. But we didn't establish those at the start, or we did, but there's been disconnect going on and we haven't challenged that, or there's been some things happening that have led to that. The cracks just gotten bigger and we've allowed it to get bigger. So that's why I really enjoyed the conversation we had, and Mark shared some wonderful examples, and Simon, you came in with a different perspective again, layering what we were talking about. But I think it's a wonderful listen for any coach because it's the reality of what happens on such a regular basis. And I'll say this, it happens more than coaches acknowledge, because it's easy just to turn a blind eye to it and think it'll go away and just convince yourself again, creating that false narrative we talked about earlier on in your head.
I think all episodes, people in education, people that work for the NHS, big organisations, corporate, they could all get something from any episode. It may take a bit more challenging to connect. That's an episode that anyone, business, big organisation like the NHS, schools will listen to that, and it will resonate with them, and it will give them real tools and strategies that they can commit to make the connection back. Every client I work with, I've got global corporate now, sports at all levels from the highest, working through individual. Every single one of them has this issue at some point. And a lot of my work, particularly in the big global organizations where you're not even in the same office, not even in the same country, the disconnect can happen within a month, even like started close. It's got nothing to do with whether you like somebody or not. It's real connecting to how is the relationship? Is it fit for purpose? No, I'm starting to see the cracks. What can I do now? As opposed to letting it separate and hope the other person is going to make the change. No, this is where we need to be recognizing and being proactive. What can I do? Reconnect back in. And I think we share some real good examples with that anyone from any organization can take and use.
Also, what we used in that episode that I think is useful for the listeners, we shared a couple of models and interventions that, you know, people could take on just after listening to that podcast. Okay, I'd encourage you to do a bit of research. So, for example, the NEAT model, you know, NEAT, we discussed what that was in detail and how to use it. And we gave an example of how Simon did it really well, as he was an assistant coach of mine 2 years ago at halftime in a changing room. And I remember saying on that podcast, it turned the game around. It wasn't technical, tactical. That had the biggest shift on our performance second half. And NEAT meaning normalize it, accept it. You're going to express emotion, but what's the next play? You know, how do you move on from that? And then the other one we shared, I remember discussing it myself. It was around restorative practice. You know, and just taking some of the concepts that I learned in my previous domain, which was as a teacher at a school in West London, Mark, where you came in and we did a wonderful project. But restorative practice being just an expression to people that when you act like this, it makes me feel like this. So what we shared in that podcast was how you can have conversations that disconnect is happening and the impact it's having on the people you're surrounded by. As a point of entry to what could be perceived as a difficult conversation. So I think there was some really good examples shared of how you could go about. You could come off that podcast and go, right, I've got something I could try the next time this happens.
Yeah, on reflection, that episode makes me consider why I disconnect in some situations, because it's not always conscious, it's not always known, and there's some resistance often towards reconnecting with somebody or establishing a connection with somebody in particular. Like, why is it easier for me to connect or reconnect with person X, but harder with person Y? What is it about me that's different, that perceives the situation different for those two people? And I wonder if it's just something about like feeling safe enough, and that staying away from somebody is some sort of self-protection, because in order to reconnect with that somebody, I'd have to probably acknowledge something about myself. First of all, I'd have to acknowledge that I have disconnected, which itself can be challenging. So yeah, what is it about ourselves that prevents us from reconnecting? What is it about me as a parent that might slow down my willingness to reconnect with somebody in my family?
I think we won't get into the why, but I think this just points towards why I don't think any coach should ever do this alone. I don't care what level you coach at, whether you're an under 14 community coach, and okay, it's a lot easier potentially, or what level, but if you practice twice a week and you have a competitive game on the weekends, there's so much that happens over the course of a year. It's unfair to ask one person to do this job. And I, as a coach, as somebody who's a strong advocate of coach development, coach support, coach progression, and the benefits of coaching, I'm really strong on that concept that no coach should do this alone. It's too difficult. It's unfair. We're human. We're going to make mistakes. But Simon, you could, if you had a strong assistant coach or a relationship with a strong assistant coach, I believe I could be that person for you. I think we could have those conversations where you can actually feel more equipped to deal with those things. If I'm ever struggling with certain things, I know I can just pick up the phone and call one of you who I know have a depth of knowledge and an understanding of me, that you will be able to make me feel like I can tackle that, at least make me feel strong enough, or give me some interventions and methods I could take on. So again, when you are feeling these things, who do you go to? Who's your support system that you're surrounding yourself with? And it doesn't have to cost you money, but will cost you time and energy and effort to think who that person could be, and is that person willing to do it?
Well, look, we're taking nearly 45 minutes here, so let's kind of keep things moving, and because we've covered 5 different topics here. This is a reflection episode for us, so maybe it's my turn to finish, but maybe we could do it quickly, and I could ask you guys about just the episode we just did. So let's reflect on the episode about reflection that we just finished, because that might be recency bias, but that might be my favorite episode of the season, because we really got into some of the detail of why people reflect, the value of it, but then what stops us from reflecting. So let's maybe reflect back on our experience of this podcast so far. What's worked, and what have we enjoyed about it? What are we grateful for as we head into the new year? Mark's grateful for his dogs, who's getting a little bit of attention there. Because when I reflect back, I'm definitely I'm grateful to you, Mark, for holding us accountable and keeping us on track, and I'm grateful to you, Alan, that we've got shared experiences where we've coached together that we can then share with listeners on this podcast. So and last of all, I'm grateful to anybody who's listened to any episode for any length of time. What about you guys?
My dog has now stopped barking. It's the neighbour or somebody. Before I do that, I listened to, it was an interview. It was a UFC fighter, and she shared something. She just won the UFC championship, double Olympic gold medalist at 2 separate Olympics for judo, was abused by her coach as a child, worked through it. Phenomenal role model as an individual. but she's very religious. And she said something that just stuck with me based on coaching. And she was interviewed, and she goes, "Oh, you're quite religious." She says, "Well, I have faith." And the interviewer was asking about religion. She says, "Well, let's not get caught up in religion. Everyone has faith. You can choose a religion, but the commonality is faith." And that's not a great quote from what she said, but that's where they're getting to. And it struck me that for all the challenges that we see on social media about coaching and coaching styles and ecodynamics or drills or whatever it is, I think what we're sharing is faith as coaching, that we want to get the best out of the people around us. What you choose and how you choose a style is like choosing a religion. Is great coaching isn't about choosing a way. It's about understanding the best way in the moment and not being fixed on that process. So the faith of great coaching, I think, is amongst every person that has a belief in a style. But as soon as we get caught up into a style, we're starting to limit the faith. Is that a bit too deep, or was that?
No.
And you've just touched, and you've just given some really rich insight to episode 14 around coaching profile, profile and styles. Well, that was you're an accidental hero, by the way, for doing that. I don't think it was your intention.
So, do you want us to do the grateful, Simon? Or
yeah, Alan. Why don't you go first, Alan?
As I look back on the year, I guess first of all, I'm grateful to you two guys for this podcast. I as much as I share on here, I take, and I still take, and I re-embed. Most of the things you guys talk about, not all, because you bring something new very often, but obviously we've had a lot of these type of conversations before, but one-off is not enough. It's just, it's difficult. This is tough. Coaching's tough. Supporting coaches is tough. And this gives me a real space to reflect and to embed some of the learnings that I can then share with other coaches on my journey. The other thing I want to say thank you to you guys. Again, I'm showing gratitude to both of you. Is when I was away at the European Championship in the summer, I was out of action for about 6 weeks, and you guys did 2 or 3 episodes that I listened to while I was away in Turkey and Armenia, and it really helped recalibrate me in that moment. So when you're away for 6 weeks and you're in the mud, you're in the weeds, and you're just going and you're doing, and it's it's every day. You don't have the support. I know I could have picked up a phone anytime, but you get caught up in the doing. My walks in the morning and listening to this podcast and the episodes I missed that I wasn't on were really good at recalibrating me and re-energizing me, in fact. And then the last thing I'm grateful for as I look back on this journey is all the coaches that let me into their worlds. That they like I said, they let me see what goes on behind the curtain. That's a real privilege, and that's a lot of learning comes with that. And it's and I'm grateful that I'm skilled enough and I'm equipped enough to be able to help coaches navigate this difficult domain that is coaching. And you two contributed to my skill set to that quite a significant bit.
Go for it, Mark.
So my dogs, because Simon said I can't speak of dogs. So in essence,
is that you wiping your nose? You're getting a little teary there, Mark. Thinking about your dogs.
Just every day, yeah. Mine might be a bit deeper, but I mean, I've always said, I've got my 4 pillars of wellness, which is having purpose in life, which is what my job gives me, impacting others, exercise, driving racing cars, and my rescue dogs. So I know if I've got 2 or 3 of these going, if one drops a bit, I'm always in a good place. So I'm just really grateful. My brain is still working. I've got energy where I can do what I need to do. And I've got people that still value me to give me purpose so that I can have an impact with people when I'm with them that stays with them when my time with them is over. And that keeps me going. That gets me up every morning and knowing there's someone on a Zoom or a phone call, or I'm going to meet somebody that I can add value to, but add value in a way that will stay with them once my time with them has left. I think that's the bit for me, and I'm still love challenging and learning new things. Like this podcast helps connect to little things. There's been 3 new recording tutorials that I'm designing now based on our conversation. That's missing. I need to share this in the process. So the fact my brain can still work, the fact I'm pain free, the fact people still value me, that are open the door for me to let me in, is just fantastic. It means I never have to retire, and I think that's my goal, is never retire. If as long as I'm valued and my brain can still function, I can still add value, then I'm in a happy place.
Oh, that's great. That's really nice, Mark. Really nice. I'm wondering about, as our listeners think back on the first half of their season, if they're in the Northern Hemisphere or if you're in the Southern Hemisphere and you've just finished your season, you're getting a chance to relax and look back. It's easy to be grateful for those good moments. Like for me, we had a couple of big games in the first half of the season, elimination games that we won, and they were, the team came together, and it was one of those great experiences where you feel that sort of connection with everybody together because you're all pursuing the same thing. But it's kind of easy to be grateful for that. It's much, much harder to be grateful for the really difficult moments you have in coaching and what they can teach you about yourself, and the way that coaching kind of holds up a mirror to the best and worst of ourselves. And we're actually pursuing an endeavor that, by its very nature, if you are self-aware and you reflect, is going to help you be a better person, because it's the hard moments that really introduce you to yourself. To paraphrase, I think it's Pat Riley, adversity introduces the person to themselves. And it's those adverse moments, those difficult moments in coaching that I've learned to become grateful for, because those are the moments that really push me forward as a person. Well, the only thing left to do is to wish you guys and all our listeners happy holidays. We'll be posting this episode just before Christmas. We won't be working over the Christmas break, so we'll take 2 or 3 weeks off, and we'll come back bigger and stronger in January. As always, smash that like button. Subscribe. It really does make a difference. Comment, send us a DM. So thanks to everybody for making it through to the end of this episode. And thanks to you, Mark, and thanks, Alan.
Can I just add for the listeners, one of the difficult things for people like us that aren't software ninjas or marketing ninjas is, I believe, and it's easier for me to sell this because it's not just me. I find it very difficult to sell myself on my own, but I truly believe that for coaches and managers, we're sharing some real texture that can add value and may get someone out of a hole in mental health, in focus, in performance. But if they never hear about it, never see it, they're not going to find us. So I know it's not natural. I'm not great at doing it. I listen to something great. It's being proactive to go, I'm going to share that on my social media with a link to go, guys, have a listen to this. But if you can do that for us, one, it's going to help us grow. But the most important thing is someone may listen to that needs this right now, and they'll never listen to it unless they're exposed to it. So you helping us is going to help them.
Alan, any famous quotes for us or wise words before we head off?
Wise words. If I don't get my dogs out for a walk in the next 30 seconds, I think they're probably going to make their first appearance on each shoulder. So I just want to say thanks to all the listeners. Thanks for the engagement. I'm surprised each week when someone sends me a message or I meet someone at my club or in our community saying, I really enjoyed you. I had a referee. I forgot to tell you this, guys. About 3 weeks ago, a referee, we were in Aberdeen, of all places, came up to me and said, love your podcast. The last episode was the best. And it really took me by surprise. He just finished refereeing our game when he said it to me. It was really funny, actually. So, yeah, thanks to all the listeners. Really appreciate it.
Hey, future episode, we need to get a referee on, talk about referee-coach relationships. All right. I'm previewing January already. Thanks, guys. Have a good break.
Thank you. See you later.